All right, let's slow this down for a second. People love to argue about Bitcoin's price. They yell about charts, they scream about moons and crashes, but almost nobody talks about the one moment that actually matters. What happens when the very last Bitcoin is mined? No more new coins, no more block rewards, no printing, no emergency meeting, just 21 million Bitcoin. That's it. Locked. Forever. And here's the part people miss. This isn't a rumor. This isn't a marketing line. This isn't a theory. It's baked into the code. Bitcoin didn't show up in 2009 because technology suddenly got cool. It showed up because the system broke trust. Banks failed, money got printed, bailouts happened, and regular people paid the bill. Bitcoin was a response to that moment. Not with slogans, with rules. One of those rules is simple and ruthless. There will never be more than 21 million coins. Not about 21 million, not 21 million unless something comes up, not we'll talk about it later. 21 million. Period. That's what separates Bitcoin from every government currency ever created. Dollars, euros, yen, they can all be expanded when it's convenient. Bitcoin doesn't care about convenience. Changing that supply cap would require the majority of the network to agree, and if that ever happened, Bitcoin wouldn't really be Bitcoin anymore. The trust would evaporate instantly. So the cap stays, and the clock keeps ticking. Now let's talk mining, because that's where the countdown lives. Bitcoin mining isn't about digging holes in the ground. It's about securing the network. Roughly every 10 minutes, miners compete to add a new block of transactions to the blockchain. The winner gets paid. That payment comes in two parts: newly created Bitcoin, transaction fees. The new Bitcoin part is called the block reward. Here's where it gets interesting. Every 4 years, that reward gets cut in half. That's the halving. In 2009, miners earned 50 Bitcoin per block. In 2012, it dropped to 25. 2016, 12.5. 2020, 6.25. 2024, a little over 3. And it keeps shrinking. Not suddenly, not dramatically, slowly, predictably, relentlessly. By the time we're deep into the 22nd century, miners won't be earning whole coins anymore. They'll be earning tiny fractions, slivers, dust. And then, sometime around the year 2140, the last fraction of the last Bitcoin gets mined. That's it. No entourage. So what changes when that happens? Here's the big one. Miners stop getting paid in new Bitcoin. Today, miners are partially subsidized by new supply. That's what helps justify massive investments in hardware and electricity. After 2140, that subsidy is gone. From that point forward, miners live on transaction fees alone. Which raises a fair question. Why would anyone keep mining? The answer depends on what Bitcoin becomes. If Bitcoin is widely used, not for coffee purchases, but for settling large transactions, moving serious value, acting as a global savings layer, then fees could be more than enough. People will pay to move billions securely. In that world, miners don't disappear. They compete harder. But if Bitcoin adoption fades, if activity dries up, if nobody wants block space, then miners leave, security weakens, and the network gets easier to attack. That's not fear talk, that's incentive talk. Bitcoin doesn't promise outcomes, it enforces rules and lets incentives do the rest. Now let's address the question everyone's really thinking. What happens when the last Bitcoin is mined? Here's the honest answer. Probably not much. And that surprises people. The 21 million limit isn't a secret. Markets have known about it since day one. That means traders, institutions, and future governments have over a century to price it in. The scarcity isn't a shock in 2140. It's a slow squeeze that starts decades earlier. By 2036, more than 99% of all Bitcoin will already exist. At that point, new supply is basically noise. Bitcoin is already scarce in practice, long before it becomes scarce in theory. So the last Bitcoin being mined is more like a symbolic finish line than a starting gun. The real impact happens quietly, years before anyone throws a party. People like to compare Bitcoin to gold, and this is where that comparison actually works. Gold didn't suddenly become valuable the day mining slowed down. Most of the gold that exists is already above ground. New mining adds a tiny amount each year. Bitcoin follows the same arc, except with math instead of geology. No new discoveries, no surprise supply, no breakthroughs that change the curve. Just a slow, predictable tightening. That predictability is the point. But here's where the story gets bigger than price charts. Bitcoin isn't just changing how people store value, it's changing how people think about money. For most of modern history, saving meant watching your purchasing power erode. Inflation wasn't a bug, it was a feature. You were encouraged to spend, borrow, and speculate just to stay even. Bitcoin flips that mindset. It rewards patience. It punishes dilution. It introduces the idea that money doesn't need to be flexible. It needs to be trustworthy. Every halving reinforces that lesson. And whether Bitcoin survives to 2140 or not, that idea is already out in the world. It doesn't go back in the box. Now, let's be clear. None of this is guaranteed. Bitcoin could become a foundational layer of global finance. It could settle into a digital gold roll, or it could fail entirely. Technology changes, politics interferes, human behavior is unpredictable. But even if Bitcoin disappears tomorrow, the experiment still matters. For the first time in history, humanity created a monetary system with a fixed supply, no central issuer, no emergency override, and no loyalty to power. That alone changes the conversation forever. So what happens when the last Bitcoin is mined? The supply freezes, miners work for fees alone, and the world finds out whether the hardest money ever created deserves to last. The real countdown isn't to 2140. It's happening right now. Every block, every halving, every moment the system keeps running without permission. And whether Bitcoin becomes a permanent fixture of civilization or a footnote in economic history, one thing's already settled. Money will never be thought about the same way again. That's not hype. That's just where we are now. Pull up a seat.
Hey y'all, I hope this helped you understand this stuff a little better. Let me know in the comments, and let me know if there is a topic you are curious about. Maybe I can help. You can also check out these two videos. Hope they help you. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hype this video. Always appreciate y'all, and thanks for stopping by the Stoop. God bless always.